and develop techniques from the ground up in a short period of time. Then it had to sell its services to traditional military commanders who understood neither its role nor how it functioned. Despite resistance from American rivals and from British intelligence, which viewed OSS as a junior partner rather than an equal, OSS expanded and was engaged in nearly every theater of the war. Historians had tended to relegate OSS to a sideshow, suggesting that it made little difference in the war's outcome. Now that the records are open and the veterans are telling their stories, however, it can be shown that OSS played a substantial role in the Allied victory.
ストリーミングエスケープフロムタークオフ LVL17 ソロスキャンタスクスパイプ一人のスカビングとタスク
Spy School. A few days after Pearl Harbor, General Donovan summoned two men to his office. Dr. J.R. Hayton, former vice governor of the Philippines, and Kenneth Baker of the Psychology Division of COI's Research and Analysis Department. Neither had any idea what the meeting was about. After the men were seated, Wild Bill quickly came to the point. I want you to stop the schools. One schools. The SI training schools. But we don't know anything about espionage schools. Or does? Baker and Hayton had their hands full. The newly designated Coordinator of Information, COI, later redesignated OSS, and the unprecedented task of creating a world-class intelligence organization overnight, from scratch. It was hampered by America's traditional aversion to spycraft. Unlike most of the world's great powers, America had limited experience in espionage. The same could not be said of America's British allies. Britain's SOE, Special Operations Executive, and SIS, Secret Intelligence Service, having been at war for over 2 years, had only experience necessary to lay the foundation for COI's undercover training program. The British worked with a team of COI personnel led by Hayton and Baker to develop a training curriculum designed to produce spies, saboteurs, and guerrillas. While the curriculum was being written, OSS was also constructing training facilities in the Washington, D.C. area, but they wouldn't be up and running for several months. Therefore, the first COI/OSS agents trained in Canada at Camp X, established by the British expressly to assist America with the Shadow War. Camp X was the first secret agent training school in North America, also referred to as Special Training School 103. Camp X was located in the countryside, between the sleepy towns of Oshawa and Whitby, about 30 miles outside of Toronto. The camp was so secret that even the Canadian War Cabinet wasn't informed of its existence. Camp X played such an important role in the war that the head of the British Security Coordination's BSC, Sir William Stevenson, described it as the clenched fist of all Allied secret operations in World War II. A number of notable British and American agents passed through the school. Ian Fleming is said to have drawn from the underwater frogman exercises in Lake Ontario for his James Bond character. One of the first Americans trained at Camp X was Frank Devlin. I was given a set of orders that read like a spook book, and civilian clothes. Take train such and such to Penn Station, New York, and get a train to Toronto, Canada. Go to hotel, and there you will find a message with a number. That number indicates the license on the vehicle you will take, and it will be at the west entrance of the hotel. Then for out in the vehicle, we were taken to Camp X and were enrolled as the first class. We learned the night work going out. On one of our first missions, they told us that we had to blow part of the Canadian Pacific Railroad. There were a set of rails right before a bridge. They said that this area was completely guarded, and we haven't told the guards that you were coming and they have loaded weapons. We had to rehearse it, work it out in the woods, so when we did it, we didn't get shot. It worked like clockwork. We planted all the charges under the rails and didn't blow it up, of course, but we could have done it. We had lots of classes on what to do if you were behind the lines. We learned all the things that could give you away. That was the use of weapons, close-up and hand-to-hand, all common today. It was all stuff that was dirty, not the kind of thing you learned in infantry school. You play dirty here. We learned how to dislocate someone's arm while you had a knife under their rib. I could still do it. If I tried, I might take you and throw you over the back of that chair. Eisler, commanding officer in Detachment 101, did it to everybody. You would get their hand and do something to turn it in the right place. You just do a blip and you're helpless. One of Devlin's instructors was British Captain William Ewart Fairbairn, also known as Fearless Dan or the Shanghai Buster. During the 20s and 30s, Fairbairn rose to the rank of Assistant Commissioner of the Municipal Police of one of the toughest cities on earth, Shanghai. He created one of the first SWAT teams, counter-terrorist outfit known as the Reserve Unit, RU, to quell the Chinese gangs and the organized crime that ran rampant in the city. In the back alleys of Shanghai, Fairbairn developed his own revolutionary hand-to-hand fighting system, a deadly mix of jiu-jitsu and street fighting, known initially as gutter fighting and later renamed the Fairbairn technique. In his own words, Fairbairn described his black art. When I organized and trained riot squads for the Shanghai police, I developed a system of fighting out the methods that got results. But in modern warfare, the job is more drastic. You're interested only in disabling or killing your enemy. That's why I teach what I call gutter fighting. There's no fair play, no rules except one, hear or be king. Fairbairn made a lasting impression on just about everyone he met, including OSS, who got him on more or less permanent loan from the British. OSS promoted Fearless Dan to the rank of Major and transferred him to Area B, a 9,000-acre compound in the Catoctin Mountains outside Washington, D.C., the present-day site of Camp David. At Area B, Fairbairn taught his lethal hand-to-hand fighting technique, and also how to handle the Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife, a razor-sharp stiletto of his personal design. The knife is a silent, deadly weapon. Great for sentries, never mind the blood. Just take care of it quickly. After completing a course of knife fighting, the new students took a course in unarmed gutter fighting. In a sense, this is for fools, because you should never be without a pistol or knife. However, in case you are caught alarmed foolishly or otherwise, the tactics shown here will increase your chances of coming out alive. A technique that Fairbairn demonstrated was the tiger's claw, a clenched hand that is directed at an opponent's eyes. Deceive your opponent. Make him think you're out on your feet. Now, bring the tiger's claw up from the center and put force behind it. Or knock your opponent out. But you must attack with surprise. The Shanghai Buster gave this advice on how to counter a bear hug. To break a bear hug, go loose, grab his testicles, ruin him. When asked if the typical American trainee was reluctant to employ the Fairbairn technique, since it runs counter to the American sense of sportsmanship, Major Fairbairn responded, "He does have a natural repugnance to this kind of fighting, but when he realizes that the enemy will show him no mercy, and that the message he is learning would, he soon overcomes it." Fairbairn was joined by several other legends in hand-to-hand combat, such as Rex Applegate, a crack pistol shot, and the pioneer of the technique known as offensive shooting. Applegate taught recruits how to handle a pistol in combat. When a man is faced by an assailant who has a gun in his hand and murder in his heart, he must be able to use his pistol instantly and effectively. COI and OSS recruited a broad variety of men and women. The common thread was creative out-of-the-box thinkers, distinguished by boldness and decisiveness. One such man, Lieutenant Charles Parkin Jr., was unceremoniously transferred to OSS from the U.S. Army Engineer School at Fort Belvoir after displaying some unwelcome initiative. For a way back from maneuvers, I saw all these National Guard units guarding bridges. Security was pathetic. Some units were guarding railroad bridges with unloaded rifles or a single shotgun. So I decided once I got back to Fort Belvoir to try to change things so the bridges would get proper security. I put a plan together to take my platoon to one of the bridges. First, I mentioned the plan to the officer in charge, Captain. I told him about the lack of security and that I wanted to do something about it. He said, "Charlie, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole." I went ahead with the plan since this was good training for my men. I wanted to show them we better get off our asses and start doing things right. Anyway, I called out half of my platoon that night and we rode on assault boats across the Occoquan River. These were the only railroad bridges that crossed the river into D.C. from the south. We landed and silently planted dummy explosives on the girders of the railroad bridges. It was raining that night, and to divert the guard's attention, I went up and talked to him. The fake charges were set in all the right places. They'd been real explosives. We could have blown the bridges sky high. When I got back to the base that morning, I sat down and wrote a report of what we did and why we did it. The report went to my battalion commander, and I don't know what he said, but the next thing I knew, I was being called to HQ with his boss. He said in essence, "This thing is too much to handle. The National Guard versus the Army. I'm transferring you to an outfit in Washington called the Coordinator of Information that can put your talent to use." Barkin soon became COI's primary demolition instructor. One of Barkin's first recruits was his fraternity brother from Penn State, a former National Wrestling standout, Frank Gleason. After the war, Gleason continued a career in demolitions and special operations, retiring as a colonel and professor at the U.S. Army Command at General Staff College in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Charlie recruited me, and one of the first things he did was send me to industrial sabotage school in England run by the SOE. What they teach you at sabotage school will blow your mind. 6 or 7 people that are properly trained can cripple a good-sized city. It is as easy as can be. These terrorists scare me. If they know this stuff, which I'm sure they do, it's really easy to cripple a medium-sized city with trained demolitionists and arsonists. We learned how to operate and destroy locomotives at power plants, the turbines at power plants, communication systems of telephones. We also learned how to make people sick by poisoning the city's water supply, shitty stuff like that. We were taught how to fight dirty. Using a locomotive, we learned how to take the controls and get the train moving at a high speed and jump off, creating a runaway train that would plow into something. Isn't that awful? We destroyed rolling stock by removing grease in the gearboxes and putting sugar in gasoline tanks to destroy the engines. We learned how to make explosives and sugar from basic household supplies, how to start a fire to take out a city. I knew Stanley Lovell, head of OSS R&D, quite well, and he introduced me to Aunt Jemima. It was a plastic explosive that looked like baking flour. The concept of it was that you could easily transport it behind the lines. In China, we made muffins from the stuff. I wanted to show Major Miles how you could bake Aunt Jemima into muffins, put a plastic cap into it, and blow something up. Looks like regular flour, but if you look carefully in a little piece, you'd see it was gritty, unlike flour. It could make bread, so I told this Chinese cook at Happy Valley to make some muffins out of the explosive flour. I said, "Do not eat those muffins. They are poison. Do not eat them." You should have seen them when they came out of the oven. They were gorgeous. The cook thought to himself, "Well, those damn Americans want those muffins for themselves." He violated what I told him, and I ate one. He almost died. One of Area B's early trainees was Milt Fountain, ambulance driver and machine gunner who had fought in the Abraham Lincoln Brigade during the Spanish Civil War in the 30s. After the war, Felsen went to Hollywood to produce movies, including the hit Saturday Night Fever. Donovan came to the headquarters of the veterans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. They had a little place in New York City. He came up and said he wanted a half dozen or so guys to help set up the OSS. He questioned folks and chose about 10 of us. He told us to meet him in Washington, which we did. We went to D.C. and were sent to an abandoned boys' camp called Area B, now Camp David. We went up to Area B. We helped set up the place as a training base for the OSS. There were cabins and a big hall and another building we later set up as a training building. One of the things we faced was Fairbairn's House of Horrors. As you enter, pop-up targets that look like Nazis would come at you from darkened rooms. This would be accompanied by simulated gunshots and strange lights. The goal was to get off 2 big shots on the targets. You had to make your way through an obstacle course, which also included pop-up targets that you had to hit and keep going. At Area B, we met Jerry Sage, a commanding officer of North Africa. He saw that we were veterans and he stuck to us. We advised him on what we thought was needed to work behind German lines. One of the things we got was a little booklet that Mao put together on guerrilla warfare. There was nothing else in those days, and we had to create it. We did 5 parachute jumps. We did everything on the basis that nothing existed, and we had to create it. On our jump training, we jumped in different places, i.e. mountain and river, etc. We got as many weapons as we could for the Axis and other European countries. In the event we were in Europe and came across weapons they were using, we know what to do with them. We went on a submarine. At the subsurface, we inflated a raft on the deck and paddled ashore. Once ashore, we had to hide the raft and go someplace where the people guarding the area did not know we were coming. And I'm sure would be very offended and take shots at us if they discovered us. It was as realistic as it could be. Maybe too realistic. We realistic training was a hallmark of the OSS commandos, who worked in units called Operational Groups, OGs. The OGs received most of their training on a lavish 18-hole congressional country club, known as Area F. Aggressiveness of spirit and willingness to close with the enemy were stressed. So OG training was designed to be as close to reality as possible. Tragic mistakes were inevitable, as OG trainee Al Materazzi found out. We moved to the Congressional Country Club and were trained by a Russian prince, Sergei Obolensky, whose last wartime experience had been with the White Russian guerrillas. Major Fairbairn trained us in knife fighting and hand-to-hand combat. But tragically, a private accidentally killed another private during a simulation. The first independent secret intelligence training school set up by OSS was RTU-11, known as The Farm, since it was located on a sprawling country estate about 20 miles north of Washington. RTU-11 offered elementary and advanced intelligence training. Recruits were taught the importance of cover, intelligence gathering methods, and the use of cutout. Individuals who would work as intermediaries between the OSS agent and sub-agent. SI training culminated in a course requiring students to execute practice undercover assignments, or schemes, in the nearby industrial centers of Baltimore, Richmond, and Philadelphia. The first scheme was relatively easy, generally involving brief intelligence work or sabotage, as Jeffrey Jones recalls. We tested the FBI in plant security and were in teams of 3. The first mission we had was to blow up a plant in Baltimore. What we did was put a note on the main boiler that said, "This is a bomb." We called up the FBI. Luckily, never got caught. I understand some people got really roughed up before the FBI called OSS to see if they were OSS or not. The second scheme was more of that. Students were allowed to carry forth documents that were produced at the training center, such as Social Security cards and BRAC cards. The recruits were often required to secure jobs and pass off the information they gathered to another person named Code. Jones's final mission was in Philadelphia. My cover story was that I was an advanced man from 20th Century Fox. I'd been out in California and I knew show business and so on. I had letterhead from the studio and used my middle names, Montgomery Talbot. I wrote a letter to the managing director of the steel mill and told him I was making a film about the plant contribution to the war effort. I checked into a hotel in Philadelphia and invited him and his wife to dinner. He wined and dined me, I wined and dined him. The boldest of that was, while I was waiting for him to go to lunch, I noticed that his secretary in the outer office had a big, long typewriter. Never seen anything like that. I said, "What is that typewriter?" She said, "I use it to type all the procurement for the steel mill." While she wasn't around, I noticed she kept putting her carbon papers in a waste paper basket. But for a couple of days, I took all of the carbon papers. From the carbon papers, we were able to project how much steel they were supposed to make. OSS told me I could do anything I could get away with, so I just walked out on a $3,000 bill at the hotel. I paid for a fancy room, extravagant meals for him and his wife. Ultimately, I had to pay half, something I've never been too happy about. X2, or counter-espionage, was sometimes described as an elite within an elite. X2 training included many of the elements of SI training, along with double agent tackling, investigative techniques, and chicanery such as lock-picking, wiretaps, and burglary. Ed Weissmiller remembers his training in idle steam. I'd been a Rhodes Scholar, and therefore I'd been overseas, just before the war. Had a pretty good command of French. It turned out that X2 heard about me and decided that they would interview me. When they did, they asked me to join. They had slots in all the branches of the armed services, and I could pick the service I wanted. Because I was a poet and was publishing poetry, I had picked the Marine Corps just out of levity. All I had to do was go through Marine training, officers training. I went through 2 courses in the Maryland and Virginia countryside during the summer of 1943 before my Marine training started. I passed with ease and even was a marksman with the 45 pistol thanks to the OSS training. What you learned in the OSS courses was mainly to keep your mouth shut. You were also trained in ciphers, decipherment, coding of messages. You were taught how to use a pistol, how to read compasses and make your way through in the dark, places you didn't know. Dan Fairbairn even taught us how to roll an ordinary newspaper into a lethal dagger. The graduation exercise was probably one of the most interesting. We were on ship to Baltimore and let loose on the town, and we were simply to come back with as much information as we could about what was going on that had to do with the war effort. If we got in trouble, they didn't know it. We were in trouble on our own. I picked the Baltimore, Ohio Railroad because I knew that it was probably in touch with just about everything that was going on. I weighed in and said that I was a writer. With any lie, you learn to make it as close to the truth as possible. If you make up an elaborate lie, then you have to be able to repeat all aspects of the elaborate lie over and over at any time, make any order. So I said I was a writer just down from Cambridge, about to go into the war myself, but I wanted to write one big story before I went into the war. I'd take Baltimore because so much was going on in terms of manufacturing supply for the armed services. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought the key to the whole thing would be the Baltimore, Ohio Railroad. They thought this was just, well, they asked me, of course, for my ID. I said that I'd spilled a cup of coffee on my lap just before I came over and I had to change my clothes quickly. And I didn't transfer all of my stuff, but I would bring my complete ID the next day. They said that was fine. They assigned me a car, and a driver, and a photographer, and drove me around to the various railroad entities. When you got to a secure area, they would say politely, "Well, we're not supposed to let you through here." The driver had various errands of his own to do while he was taking me around, and he would say, "Hey, you're not supposed to come in here, but surely there's no harm." And I would go. I would go, and I had notebooks full of information about what was being manufactured, and where it was being shipped to, and where it was being shipped out from. Just being a nice guy could get you into the most sensitive areas. I went back to the OSS training area with this appalling load of stuff, turned it in, and was later informed that I graduated. Another student posed as a purchasing agent for a friendly, neutral country, and was able to walk out the front door of a plant with the complete blueprints of the latest bomber. But not all of the schemes had happy endings. Several students were arrested and incarcerated by the local authorities or FBI. One student who posed as an electrician was taken to a remote location, interrogated under a spotlight, and summarily beaten for hours. "I never broke," he later explained. He was released 48 hours after he was called in. Beginning in late 1942, OSS dispatched instructors overseas, train foreign nationals for work in Europe. Over 2,500 The name of the game is Cash Money. So looting and survival. No need to get fancy with the looting. Just grab what's here. Take the bits. all the BTRs nearby. Got it. I'm gonna be hesitating a little bit about going outside right now. Something that they play. I'll hold on to it for now. I don't think so. I don't know. I'll maybe regret it later. Maybe people are buying it to open up their, what you call it? Nutrition station. Oh. Oh, I need that. Pretty good ammo. Feel so. This is the good one, the Koran. Yeah. Let's get going to that door kicked in. That scared me. It happened right when I was looking for BTR. That didn't work.
Иди, идиот, трахать тебя и всю семью, говно собачье! Жлоб вонючий!
Alright. Somebody was in there. We don't have a bad haul. And there seem to be either PMCs or super skittish scats around. Let's just try to get out. Couldn't tell if that guy was a scav or not. I think he was a PMC just with a corazza on. I could have naded him. But I didn't really want to fight. I want to make money. Like I said, survival is the point right now. Leave a little bit of space. Yeah, let's just take this whole bag. We can do the bag. We can do the zephyr hunter. We can empty our pockets. Oh no, I want a zephyr hunter up here. And this nice purpose. Okay. We don't really need to see it say the glorious will make some stats. sorry. It's
Ну, начало дня уже неплохое.
He was released 48 hours after he was hauled in. Beginning in late 1942, OSS dispatched instructors overseas, trained foreign nationals for work in Europe. Over 2,500 male and dozens of female agents passed through OSS parachute training, although few women took part in the activities of the operational branches of OSS. Many OSS agents were trained by the British, including members of the Jedburgh program, three-man special operations SO teams that jumped into France, Holland, and Belgium on or after D-Day. We would train that in the state outside Peterborough at Milton Hall, a huge mansion, several thousand acres, recalled former Jed Joseph DeFrancesco. One test involved a group of 5 or 6 of us. They said you have a mission in occupied territory and you are going to destroy a radar station. You land a few miles from there. On your way, you come across a civilian going to work. When they asked, what are you going to do about it? One of the men in my group was a Catholic priest, and he said I'd kill him. I said to myself, Jesus, this guy is pretty bloodthirsty. I said I'd try to avoid him. They also said, on landing, one of the men on your team breaks a leg. The priest said, I'd kill him. I said to him, you are a bloodthirsty bastard, aren't you? This guy was later captured and beheaded by the Jap. As the war progressed, OSS expanded. The rapid expansion taxed the training areas. This led to the development of a groundbreaking assessment program that included screening the qualifications of OSS candidates before they underwent expensive and time-consuming individual training. Today, a shopping center stands on the land once occupied by OSS's main assessment center, Station S, located in Fairfax, Virginia. Candidates wore Green Army fatigues with no rank and were subjected to a battery of intelligence and aptitude tests designed to test ingenuity, creativity, leadership, personality, and even patience, as Secret Intelligence Agent Gene Searchinger remembers. There were some large teakatoid holes and blocks of holes that the hollows could go into. They handed you a diagram and they said, build this, but you're not allowed to touch it. You're supposed to give orders to these 2 helpers and they'll build it. The diagram looked like a very complex rectangle. The helpers greeted me. Hello, boss. I said something like, let's get started. One said, who, me? Why don't you call us by name? We have names, you know. Don't you care who the people are you had working for you? They shook my hand and said, I'm Kippy and this is Buster. They tried to get me to reveal my real name. One of them did everything you told him to very slowly. The other one always had a better idea. Why don't you try it in that order, or try it in that order, or try it this way, put it in this hole. It turned into a Three Stooges comedy routine since they were trying to sabotage the effort. They claimed only one person got it to work. That person was a massive Texan who reportedly flattened the 2 helpers with 2 well-timed blows. Searchinger remembers another test. They would take you into a room and tell you to go to L House. By this time, you were supposed to know where L House was, even though no one told you. Go to L House and go to the library, and you'll find a book there called Luma Luma, and memorize what it says and come back here. And by the way, if anything should happen while you're coming back, have a good excuse for why you were there. Goodbye. They clicked a stopwatch, but you'd have to scramble over to L House. You'd have to run to get there. You'd find the book, which contained a piece of paper that was filled with phone numbers and addresses. It was an impossible thing to memorize. At the bottom of the paper it read, further information will be found in a container behind the bookshelf. I looked there and saw a box with a wire going inside, so I decided not to look into it. You didn't touch it, you were smart. They left the house in the dead of night, and the guy stepped forward with a bayonet and says, stop. You're taken to another house, and the light is pouring out of the bench, and they are interrogating you as to why you were there and what was going on. By this time, you were supposed to have a clever story. I think I played the nervous man and somehow came off as believable. Written tests were given to assess everything from propaganda skills to memory skills to personality. The most exotic test was the murder mystery, which was designed to test students' investigative and inference skills. At noon on the third day of the program, students were given copies of the mythical Fairfield Chronicle, announcing the discovery of a dead body of a woman several miles from the village. Additional clues were provided in the form of dozens of letters and testimonials. The group was told they were the sole party investigating the murder and the solve it. On the evening of the last day, a senior member of the assessment staff judged each team's results and declared a winner. For those unrelated to the program, a party was thrown for relaxation. Of course, nothing was what it seemed, as Jean Searchinger discovered. The fucking test was a relaxing party. They wanted to see if you relax and give up your cover. A document describing the party describes its true purpose further. The informality and conviviality were aided and abetted by the use of liquor, debates, the telling of off-color stories, horseplay between students and staff. Although social relations were the most important trait measured, data were frequently attained on practical intelligence, emotional stability, and motivation and propaganda skills. OSS's greatest asset was its people. Remarkably, while the organization operated in every theater of the war, in neutral and occupied countries, and even in Berlin itself, only 143 Americans died in the line of duty. This number, however, does not include the hundreds of foreigners who were killed while working for OSS. Nevertheless, character and training that emphasized leadership, creative thinking, self-confidence, and decisive action were deciding factors in their success. Most of all, OSS expected its men and women to win. They did both during the war and in life after it. Chapter 2. R&D and the Campus. Professor Moriarty is the man I want for my staff here at OSS. I think you're it. If Idle could be as evil a character as Conan Doyle made him in his Sherlock Holmes stories, I don't give a damn how you look, Donovan replied sharply. I need every subtle device and every underhanded trick to use against the Germans and Japanese by our own people. You will have to invent them all, Lovell, because you're gonna be my man. Thus did Dr. Stanley Lovell become head of the OSS's Research and Development branch. As the real-life counterpart to James Bond's legendary Q, Lovell had a hand in developing many of the gadgets and special weapons needed to conduct covert warfare. The day after his meeting with Donovan, Lovell set about recruiting some of America's top scientists and young talent to work with him at the Maryland Research Laboratory. Scientists and other specialists were organized into 4 divisions: technical, camouflage, documentation, and special assistance. The technical division designed and built the specialized weapons used in the field, such as the flour-like Aunt Jemima, an explosive substance that could be baked into muffins and bread. Then there was the Casey Jones, an explosive device that could be attached to the underside of railroad cars. When Casey's electronic eye sensed a sharp reduction of light, When Casey's electronic eye sensed a sharp reduction of light, such as when the train entered a tunnel, the device detonated and blew off the car's wheels. By derailing long lines of train cars and tunnels where they had to be removed by hand, Casey could block rail lines for days at a time. In the event the device was found, an official-looking warning sticker was attached to the device that read in German, "This is a car movement control device. Removal or tampering is strictly forbidden under heaviest penalties by the Third Reich Railroad Consortium." OSS scientists also developed the Beano grenade, a far more lethal alternative to the conventional hand grenade. 24-year-old Al Bolton was a leading person behind the Beano. I did a lot of the testing on the Beano baseball grenade. We had 12 or 15 men-sized paper silhouettes, and we detonate a standard black powder grenade and cut the holes. Then I would throw a Beano, which had a butterfly on the top of the grenade. You throw it like a baseball, and the wind would catch up with the butterflies and pull a pin out, and it would explode once it contacted something. Unlike a regular army grenade, you didn't have a second or two to throw it back. The way it killed people was that it stunned them first and then sent little pieces of steel into their internal organs, such as the kidneys and heart, and they would die. We loaded the Beano with TNT, which packed about twice the explosive force of a typical grenade. The Beano vaporized the steel frame on some of the silhouette. I was horrified when one person died mishandling the grenade. An army engineer giving a lecture on the grenade said it could be handled like a normal baseball. During the lecture, he threw it up in the air over his head. Grenade armed, and when he stepped under the grenade to catch it, he was blown apart by the explosion. Silenced, high-standard pistols, submachine guns, dart guns, and other weapons were developed for OSS field operations. Uniquely, Lovell's scientists created weapons such as the Stinger, a seemingly innocent-looking 3-inch pen that was actually a miniature 22-caliber gun. The Lambs also produced tobacco pipes that doubled as pistols and an umbrella pistol. As Poston recalls, "We worked on a little assassin's pistol that was the same size as a pack of Chesterfield cigarettes. One secret agent had a mission where he was sent off to assassinate people and asked, 'So, could you put the pistol in my umbrella handle?' So we took a couple of umbrellas and we figured out how to put the gun into the handle of the umbrella. You could have it under your arm and just turn it half a turn and it would go off. The way you would kill people was by putting it right up against a guy's kidney and bam, it was gone. If you don't have a kidney, you're gone. If I was doing the stuff today that I did during the war, I'd be in jail for 56 consecutive life sentences without a chance for parole." On the high-tech side, R&D teams worked on projects such as Java Man. While a Java Man looked like an ordinary boat complete with a rusty, sea-battered exterior, the craft was actually a high-powered speedboat that was packed with explosives, designed to infiltrate enemy harbors and sink ships or destroy installations. In one of the first proposed wartime uses of television, the unmanned boat was radio-controlled from a plane and aimed using a television camera mounted on the forward deck. During tests in the Gulf of Mexico, Java Man sent a 5,000-ton derelict ship to the bottom. Several of these craft were sent to the Pacific, but the war ended before they could be used. Not all of the equipment developed by R&D was grim and deadly. Umi was a chemical that smelled like a bowel movement, branded with toothpaste size tube. Japanese soldiers took great pains to defecate in private, since it was considered shameful to do it in public, even in combat situations. According to Lovell, Umi was distributed to children in Chinese cities like Peking, Shanghai, and Canton. When a Japanese officer, preferably of high rank, came walking down a crowded sidewalk, some Chinese boys and girls would slip up behind him and squirt a shot of Umi at his trouser seat. It cost the Japanese a world of face. The substance could only be removed with dry cleaning chemicals. Camouflage division personnel provided everything an agent needed for undercover work in the field. Dental work, eyeglasses, and clothing were scrutinized on a microscopic level. The division created a variety of surreptitious accoutrements, such as lipstick and buttons with hidden compartments. Shoes were crafted with heel and sole cavities, and women's corsets were equipped with razor-sharp stilettos. Camouflage division also developed weapons that looked like everyday objects. For example, they hid explosives in lumps of coal, which were to be thrown into a trained coal car. These poison pills looked just like coal. but they exploded when shuffled into the train's boiler. Then there were the candlesticks that exploded when the wick burned to a predetermined level. The documentation division created work permits, chauffeurs' licenses, and identity papers. Engraving shops were set up in the United States and overseas to produce the documents needed on missions. The division even produced a nearly perfect duplicate of the metal Gestapo badge that conferred unlimited power on its bearer. The final R&D unit was the Special Assistance Division. Among other things, the unit created L, K, and TD pills. L stood for lethal and could be administered in the event of capture for self-profanation. 2. To preclude the possibility of revealing information under the strain of interrogation and torture. Biting down on the capsule and ingesting its contents caused instant death. Otherwise, the rubber-coated capsule could be swallowed and passed harmlessly through an agent's body. Tragically, a number of OSS agents were forced to use the deadly pill. K pills were liquid knockout drugs, while TD, truth drug tablets, were an early form of truth serum derived from narcotics. OSS assembled a committee of prestigious psychologists and neurologists to develop the truth drug. After reviewing half a dozen drugs, the committee selected tetrahydrocannabinol acetate, a derivative of NDMC. In trials, cigarettes laced with the drug successfully loosened the tongues of test subjects. The most extraordinary experiment was conducted by a former New York City detective, Captain George White. On May 27, 1943, I conducted a field test with cigarettes containing Lowe's acetate upon a subject who did not know he was the subject of experimentation, and who, because of his position and numerous secrets he was most anxious to conceal, the revelation of which might well result in his imprisonment. This subject alias is Augie Dallas, alias Dell, alias Little Augie. Subject is about 46 years of age, in good health, and is an occasional user of opium. He is known as a pleasure smoker, which means that while he is not addicted to the use of opium, he might smoke once or twice during a month. Little Augie is a notorious New York gangster, and in his youth served prison sentences for felonious assault and murder. In 1936, he was imprisoned in a concentration camp in Germany for a 2-year period on narcotic law charges. For the past 20 years, he's been one of the outstanding international narcotic dealers and smugglers. At one time operated an opium alkaloid factory in Turkey. He is a leader of the Italian underworld of the Lower East Side of New York City, where he resides and owns considerable property. On several occasions I have arrested this subject, but was never able to obtain sufficient evidence to warrant a conviction. In connection with a plan to utilize members of New York Italian Underground in SO and SI operations in Italy, I have had frequent occasion to talk intimately with the subject during the past 6 weeks. During the course of these conversations, we have also frequently discussed the narcotic situation in New York in general terms. Upon no occasion did he show willingness to provide any concrete information whatsoever which might be of value to the government as evidence against narcotic law violators. Augie prides himself on the fact that he has never been an informer, and that he has been instrumental in killing some persons who have been informants. He is intimately acquainted with all the major criminals in the New York area. On the day of the experiment, I requested Augie to visit me at my apartment in New York on the pretext that I wanted to talk further about plans to utilize his services in Italy. I had previously prepared cigarettes of the same brand I knew him to smoke, loaded with both 0.04 grams of Lowe's acetate and 0.02 grams of Lowe's acetate. Augie entered the apartment at 2 p.m., and at that time stated that he could not remain long as he had a friend waiting for him in an automobile outside. After a short conversation regarding the pretext on which he had come to the apartment, I gave him a 0.04 cigarette at 2:10 p.m. At 2:30 p.m., having noticed no perceptible effect, I gave him a 0.02 cigarette. Shortly thereafter, Augie became obviously high and extremely garrulous. He monopolized the conversation and was exceedingly friendly. I turned the conversation into enforcement channels, whereupon, with no further encouragement, subject divulged the following information. A prominent enforcement official had been receiving a bribe over a period of years from Augie and his associates. The place formerly occupied by Lucky Luciano and the American underworld has now been taken over by a combination headed by Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, Logie Willman, Willie Moretti. OSS R&D was also involved in developing biological weapons of mass destruction. In a recently declassified top-secret memorandum, R&D scientist James Hamilton wrote, 6 months ago, I collected data which indicated a very rare bacterium, provisionally designated peach fuzz, would be particularly useful for bacterial warfare. Through Dr. Rogers, I was put in touch with the secret BW, Biological Warfare Committee, and transmitted the information to them. Later, Stanley Lovell was appraised of the organism's possibilities. After considerable pressure from Lovell and myself, the BW Committee's chairman finally assembled a group of experts to evaluate the organism. The venomous opinion was that the organism had tremendous possibilities and might prove to be a most lethal BW weapon. The most difficult problem which developed was that of producing large quantities of the material. At our suggestion, the committee set up an extensive research project to solve this problem. A demand selected by us was put in charge. Chemical warfare is ready and anxious to go into mass production within the next 2 or 3 months, or as soon as production methods are worked out on a large scale. To match the special assistant's most farcical plan involved lacing Hitler's food with estrogen. An OSS operative with access to Hitler was to inject the female sex hormone into the Führer's vegetarian diet of carrots and beets. Lovell provided a tongue-in-cheek recollection of the projected outcome. His poor emotional control, his violent passions, his selection of companions like Rome, all led me to feel that a push to the female side might do wonders. The hope was that his mustache would fall off and his voice become soprano. It is unlikely that the scheme went much beyond high-level planning. While R&D was making the weapons and gadgets OSS personnel used in the field, the research and analysis branch analyzed the information OSS gathered. OSS initiated the concept of a structured research and analysis division. At the time, independent strategic intelligence analysis was virtually non-existent in most of the world's intelligence organizations. Known as the campus, this chairborne division was staffed by more than 900 scholars, practically a who's who of the leading academic minds in America. R&A was unlike the OSS's other branches. As historian Robin W. Winks put it, SI, secret intelligence, and X2, counter-espionage, were the coaches, the clever men, the quarterback, while SO housed the rest of the job. R&A gave refuge to the glassy-eyed students who came out to cheer the team on, and who burrowed in the libraries, gnolls of a kind. Instead of guns or knives, the bespectacled economists, historians, political scientists, and anthropologists wielded 3x5 index cards against the Axis, gleaning crucial intelligence from the raw data obtained by OSS's operational arms. New filing systems were created, and microfilm was employed. Most importantly, R&A created a methodology for studying intelligence. Teams of scholars were assigned problems, something virtually unheard of on pre-war college campuses. The teams produced reports on a wide variety of topics, ranging from German economic war production to Hitler's state of mind. Headed by William Langer, R&A stressed the importance of objective and neutral reports, and the use of team methods backed by peer review and under supervisory control. But in spite of Langer's best efforts to remain objective and neutral, some branches of the government and military viewed R&A as a hotbed of radicalism. R&A produced over 3,000 formal research studies and 3,000 maps. OSS economists, working in a group known as the Enemy Objective Unit, EOU, played a key role in the Allies' precision bombing campaign against Germany. Using empirical data gathered from a variety of intelligence sources, the EOU determined which targets should be attacked to maximize damage on the Third Reich's industrial infrastructure. The EOU, created in 1942, was housed in the American Embassy in London. 15 professional economists, all but 2 from OSS, served in the group. One of the mainsprings of the organization was 26-year-old Rhodes Scholar Walter Rostow, who recalls the evolving methodology the group created. We sought to create target systems where the destruction of the minimum number of targets would have the greatest, most prompt, and the most long-lasting direct military effect on the battlefield. The ELU view was, then, a doctrine of warfare, not of economics or politics. Charles Kindleberger, another key player in the ELU, reveals the evolving nature of target collection within the Reich. There was an industry called abrasives using carborundum to polish steel. One camp held that if you only attack grinding wheel plants, you will win the war. We thought that was crazy because the smoothing of steel was way back in the process, and substitution could make up for the losses, so you have a substantial cushion and repair time. Those were the two issues. We thought that attacking the airplane industry would do this. I was wrong. We thought the ball bearings would be a good target, but German industry redesigned the process. They hand-carried ball bearings to the assembly line. We were wrong on that. On the other hand, we were right on with oil. Oil was an essential limiting factor on the effectiveness of Second World War armies. The ELU helped create a strategy that enabled the Allied strategic bombing campaign to inflict significant damage on Germany's oil production. Footnote: oil was only part of the solution. Post-war studies reveal that 90% of Germany's energy needs were sustained by brown coal, and 90% of the coal was transported by Germany's railroads. Allied bombing of Germany's transportation network, known as the Transportation Plan, had a crippling effect on Germany's military capacity. At the time, no one, including the ELU, made the connection between the coal, synthetic oil, and the Reich's rail network. Ultimately, the bombing idled thousands of tanks and planes. Another puzzle that RNA solved was how to make an accurate estimate of German tank production, which the British estimated was as high as 2,000 per month in 1942. The Germans knew Allied spies were monitoring the tank factories, so they staggered the serial numbers on the tanks they produced, not using all the numbers in a given sequence of consecutive numbers. British troops in North Africa provided RNA analyst Sidney Alexander with the key to the puzzle: a register of all tanks showing a specific German tank regiment. Whilst Alexander combined this report with other information to produce a revised tank production figure significantly lower than the British estimate. This mirrored-down machine turret allowed RNA to produce accurate German order of battle numbers, providing the Allies with a clearer picture of German strength in the field. During the height of the Allied bombing offensive, RNA was able to determine, contrary to other reports, that tank production was actually increasing rather than declining. Some of RNA's earliest reports focused on North Africa. Walter Rostow recalls, "We did Northwest Africa because the Germans were coming in at North Africa. That was a turnaround. Then as the Germans were lining up to go into southern Russia, we said, how far will they go? Well, to do that, we had to get very dirty with logistics. We studied the logistics of the Germans of land and sea, of exactly how many tons of ammunition you needed. You came by truck, how many were needed. But the point we established was that logistics was the heart of a military affair. You could figure out German logistics by extrapolation. These exercises taught us a lot about the German army and how it worked, and the tonnages that were involved, and so on." In the RNA department of OSS, some of America's brightest scholars put forth their best efforts for the war effort. Chapter 3: Intrigue in North Africa and Iberia. didn't see Wait, there's a part. Now you need to look up the part. The Simpsons need a lot. Need to accommodate me. I'm definitely not gonna use this next book. Just hurry. I want to make something here that I need. What I really need, I do want to make this. And I don't need it really. So good. Nope, they're not. It's so bad. One more. Well, I could pick up all those cans of Coke. Forget how pricey it is. I should port them from the. Oh, I can make this now. Why? The reason why it's not worth it to me. But still, but I need why. make it up. I need to make some.